Members of the Mexican Army and the Federal Police patrolled a crime scene in Navolato, in the Mexican state of Sinaloa, in February. Fernando Britta, Agence France-Presse, Getty Images. Mexico City, Mexican legislators are preparing to write the military's role in the drug war into law, drawing fire from critics who say the legislation will keep soldiers on Mexico's streets indefinitely and lead to the suspension of basic civil rights. A vote by the lower house of Congress, the Chamber of Deputies, could come as early as Thursday before debate moves to the Senate as sponsors seek passage by Dec. 15. Supporters say the measure would provide a legal framework for Mexico's armed forces to continue battling organized crime under a presidential declaration. The military has led operations against criminal gangs for more than a decade based on little more than a command from the president and the request of state governors. Over the past year, the Defense Secretary, Gen. Salvador Cienfuegos, has pressed for a law to guide deployments. But a wide array of critics, including constitutional lawyers and human rights groups, say the legislation will cement the military's leadership in the drug war, putting it beyond civilian oversight and removing any incentive for state and local leaders to build effective police forces. This is the same as militarizing police activities for the foreseeable future, or perhaps forever, said Juan Francisco Torres Landa, a lawyer who is on the board of Mexicans United Against Crime. The exception will become the norm. The debate comes as homicides in Mexico have soared to the highest level since 2006, when the government began using the military intensively to fight drug gangs and the murder rate began to climb. While there are parts of Mexico where the grip of organized crime and the virtual absence of the police require a military presence, critics of the measure point to the mounting violence as evidence that military involvement has not improved security. Legislation to reorganize local and state police forces and give the Attorney General's Office full autonomy has languished in Congress. While the military bill has been pushed along, it is being done hurriedly to please the armed forces, said Santiago Aguirre, the deputy director of the Miguel Agustin Pro Juarez Human Rights Center. The increasing role of the military has already led to a relaxation of civilian control, Mr. Aguirre said. It appears to us that Congress and the political parties are subordinating to the armed forces. The police in Veracruz, Mexico, in 2016. Homicides have soared in the past decade. Daniel Berehulik for the New York Times. Last week, General Cienfuegos renewed his call for Congress to pass the measure, saying it would bring order and sense to the work of the security forces. He also asked for the government to set general goals for pulling the military out of the effort and strengthening the police. The measure has been proposed by President Enrique Peña Nieto's Institutional Revolutionary Party, or the PRI, with support from some parts of the Conservative National Action Party. The president pressed Congress to act on Wednesday, calling the law an urgent necessity. There is no intention of militarizing the country, said Senator Cristina Diaz, a PRI legislator who leads one of the committees that will review the law in the Senate. These are temporary, not permanent actions. The legislation would define the conditions under which the army would intervene, Ms. Diaz said, adding that the bill would seek to assure respect for human rights. Deployments would be made by presidential declaration where security is at risk and state officials have asked for help. The deployments would be reviewed at least annually. The important thing is to give certainty to the armed forces, Ms. Diaz said. But critics say the legislation is so broadly written that it leaves the authorities wide discretion to define what constitutes threats to domestic security. That could open the way for the armed forces to act against political groups that it sees as posing a threat. In areas where the army has replaced the police, a state of emergency exists in practice, if not in law, and civil rights are often violated, Mr. Aguirre said. The bill would lend legitimacy, he said, to the suspension of rights such as due process and the presumption of innocence in places where the military is deployed. The president can call on the military to act whenever and however with all the information remaining classified, without controls or accountability, said Catalina Perez Correa, a law professor at the CIDE, a Mexico City university. It basically converts the Constitution into toilet paper. It's a blow against the Constitution. The military's involvement in the drug war has led to a sharp increase in complaints of human rights violations. Despite a 2014 change to the military code that allows these crimes to be investigated by civilian courts rather than military tribunals, in practice such violations are rarely punished. A study issued this month by the Washington Office on Latin America, a human rights group, found that the Mexican Attorney General's office began investigations into 505 reported violations of human rights by soldiers between 2012 and 2014, but won convictions in only 16 instances. Some of these cases may ultimately make their way to international tribunals like the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, Mr. Torres Landa said. The armed forces, he said, are desperate to have a legal basis for what they are doing and why they are doing it. A version of this article appears in print on November 30, 2017, on page A14 of the New York edition with the headline "Mexican Bill Would Cement Military's Crime-Fighting Role."